A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Fourth Estate. We're in a different studio tonight for this discussion. I'll be continuing the discussion. Last week, President Museveni called his new cabinet, or his shuffled cabinet, for a retreat, a tradition of cabinets to orient new ministers and those who have changed positions into their new portfolios. And his complaints against cabinet, saying they are incompetent and they have failed his delivery. At the same time, a report is released, a new opinion poll is released, that shows overwhelming support on who is directing activity in this country. President Museveni at 80%. He has better performance than his government combined. And everyone else falls down below. What exactly is this? A new realization by the president? That is a problem. And I was asking the question, who helps the president when he is picking cabinet? To discuss that and many other issues, let me start by introducing the Honorable Betty Olive Turuome Namisango Kamia. Very nice to have you once again on the Fourth Estate.
Thank you, Charles, and I'm glad to be here too.
It's been a while since we last had you here.
Yes, I wonder why.
No, you've been all over the place handing over schools to the president.
One school.
Yeah, one school and...
but I'm happy to be back.
Very nice to have
here.
you.
Thank you.
Hussein Kashilinji served the president as a legal assistant?
Yes.
For some time? Very nice to have you. Now in private legal practice.
Yes, I am.
Very nice to have you.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
And my colleague, Chris Obor. Chris, always a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you.
With you on the show.
You should say that Kamia is the founding member of the Fourth Estate.
Founding member of the Fourth Estate?
Yes.
And also founding member of the Forum for Democratic Change.
And also the founding,
the
founding president. She's the founding president of Federal Alliance.
She's the president of the Uganda Federal Alliance.
So she has a founding syndrome.
That's true. That's true. I always initiate things. If you go back, my track record, wherever, even the jobs I did.
Let me actually start with you on this. You are one person who's been rumored several times to... I don't know if it's a people's wish or it's just a rumor of someone who could work with the president or could actually join his cabinet. When you left the Uganda Wildlife, no, the Entebbe Zoo, as it was called,
Wildlife Education
Center now, where you were executive director and worked with the Reform Agenda, and then left Reform Agenda, founded FDC, and then left to found the Uganda Federal Alliance. People are saying, maybe you can work with the president. People keep saying that, and your name keeps hovering around. When the president says his cabinet is incompetent, what did you make of that statement?
Well, I think he's, of course, he's the supervisor, and he's the assessor or appraiser. And if he says his cabinet is incompetent, he probably knows what he's talking about. But it is part of a bigger problem. It should not be seen in isolation. It's part of a much bigger problem. One of them being, cabinet are about 80 people. But when you talk about the entire, all the people that the president appoints, because he appoints over 1,000 people, when you think of 112 presidential advisors, when you think of RDCs, when you think of ambassadors, when you think of, they're close to commissioners, chairpersons of boards, and commissioners of commissions, and, all the people that the president appoints, and they're close to 1,000. They are basically picked from the people who lost elections, NRM, primaries, or general elections. Those are the people that form the what do you call it, the basket from which he picks people. So they are people who wanted to be politicians in the first place. I mean, then many of them fail, and so he has to sort them. He has to find them, to sort them. And he said so, the president himself. I think one time he said, there are enough rooms in my... there are enough... house. Yeah, there are enough rooms in the NRM house. Just trust me. So the president accommodates his people. And in that accommodation, I think merit is not one of the key things. The more important thing is loyalty and holding them in the basket. Because if you don't, those that have gone through are in parliament. Those who have not gone through need to be kept.
About 90% of the cabinet is actually of elected officials. So they've been successful in trying to be politicians.
Yeah, that's true. They are elected officials, but you know, it's like they are elected officials, but they need the president, many of them, to get them elected with promises of districts.
You contested to be president of this country in the last election.
Yes, I did.
Yes. And maybe, who knows, you might want to contest again.
Highly likely.
Highly likely.
This is just a tactical withdrawal, by the way.
Appoint your own team and then come around and tell the nation and the world that this team I have here is incompetent. What questions should we be asking you? It is,
yeah, of course you take full responsibility for it. You take responsibility for it. But it's like I was saying, coming home to roost. You elect people not on merit, not on competence, and then you expect them to be competent.
Hussein, you advised the president, you are his legal assistant, so you advised him possibly on legal matters, wrote him some legal briefs when you served him, and you've seen his appointments over the last many years he's been in power. Were you surprised by this comment?
No, I was not.
Why?
First of all, Charles, the president didn't say cabinet is incompetent.
What did he say?
No, I think what he was saying, he was looking at how much money government has invested in the different government programs and what the output has been and where the weakness is. And the one thing he singled out was that cabinet, because ministers are supposed to supervise these programs, they are supposed to follow up, they are supposed to initiate policies. So he's saying if we have done all this, if we have invested 900 billion in UPE, but they are saying that the quality of the children, the quality of education these children are getting is poor, what is the problem? And he was saying, now, if you are the Minister of Education and this is what is happening, what have you identified? What can you identify as the problem? Why do we still have this problem? If we have built so many health centers, but we still have several deaths of mortality rates are still high and so on. Why? What is the problem? He was challenging the cabinet to wake up and do their work. Do your work, you're supposed to supervise, do it. But he didn't bluntly say you are incompetent. Otherwise, why would he appoint?
By inference, he said exactly that. It's the same thing.
That's a conclusion you would reach from by looking at what he said. But I think he was challenging his cabinet to say, look, we have got what to do. We know what we are supposed to do. It is not being done. What is the problem? Can you share that with me? What is the problem? Can you use this meeting to discuss ways and means of how we can improve on these government programs?
If you've been investing money, you use a good example of
education.
UPE. 1997 to 2015.
Yes.
Questions have been raised about quality, but that is one part of one small part of what is actually a bigger problem. The bigger problem is if you're entering 2.5 million children in primary 1, you expect at least to exit 2 million children in primary 7. What is happening is you enter 2 million or 2.5 million, you exit 500,000. And no one has taken the time to account for the others who have fallen through the cracks. And this compounds the problem. If you realize that today and say, you're asking questions now, how much can you remedy of a situation?
No, but Charles, the president is not asking the question now. You have not been privy to his meetings with his ministers. This was
need to be part of his meetings.
No. The point I'm making is that it's not the first time he's raising the issue. Otherwise, he's been moving people from different offices, taking them to different offices. We have not had the same education minister for the years you are talking about. We've had several. But now he's saying
the same problem.
If this problem is recurring,
ministers who have had the same problem.
Yeah, so if this problem is recurring, what exactly is the problem? Unless you're saying that the president shouldn't bounce ideas with his cabinet, but he's saying, can we use this meeting and find out what actually is the problem?
Did the retreat actually provide or attempt to provide those answers from what you had? I know you maintain very good sources. I know that you must have been watching on the discussions. I was waiting to see in the reporting of us, members of the Fourth Estate, in the discussions that followed, to see an exchange. That is,
a report was made. A report was made, and the Prime Minister is supposed to take it to the President, and then they discuss it. I'm not privy to that.
Chris, you take on this issue. Watching on the outside, and the President saw these very nice statements, and we discussing them for a whole week, by the way. We've been discussing on different talk shows, on different platforms, on social media. People are discussing. The President said, his cabinet, what is the problem? What is the problem?
The President makes two cardinal points here. One of them is that the government has failed. And in a daylight society, that could become the election issue. The government will get a mandate again, because it's a confession that we exist but we're not delivering. It means that the ordinary citizen is getting a raw deal from the state. And the head of state has said it. So in other countries, that would be a very big indictment on the performance of the president himself. But beyond looking at that as his performance, you also have to understand now that I think we need to begin understanding the constitution of the state and its mandate. The president is actually also alarming that there's a problem with the state. Maybe he needs to be helped to understand what the problem is. Because he has been injecting money, and the money is not reaching to the ordinary people. So where did we go wrong?
Can you maybe just correct that? He's not been injecting money. The government of Uganda has been injecting money.
Either way,
He's retaining over this.
Exactly that. He's a chief executive. Yeah, he's a policy principal. He's a sovereign. You cannot deny that. The budget we see every other day is the presidential budget. We didn't know. These others are just, our work is to read. Yes. So he has been injecting money into so many activities, but the activities are not delivering what he expects. So those are two issues. Where did we go wrong? I think the president needs to understand first that what he called the government was dismantled long ago. He's running a shell. He's not running a government. So when this Chicago School of Economics came with the idea of privatization, they said government has no business in delivering services. Get off service delivery. And he bought into it. So what happened now? There came projectization of government. So if you want to take a ministry exists, but its projects running. So a ministry has commissioners, has principal officers, has senior Ds, doing nothing, but works done by projects. So what does government do? Government spends more money on consultants, yet it's employing experts in the same ministry. So you find the taxpayer is paying money to the projects, also paying redundant staff. So the government people are not thinking. Somebody is a commissioner, but the thinking is outsourced. So, but the citizen has to pay the commissioner and also pay the project staff. The thinkers now. And when the project people are thinking, in whose interest are they thinking? Is it for the ordinary citizen? Not at all. Take example agriculture. It was torn apart. Agriculture is a shell. Narrow is doing its own things. Who's funding Narrow? The US, the World Bank. For whose interests? Their interests. So now, if you want government to perform, I'm now helping President Museveni, get out of this notion that government has no business. The citizens in any country have no contract with the World Bank, have no contract with the private sector. They have a contract with the state. And the primary extent of the state is to improve the well-being of each and every citizen.
Okay.
Now, when you bring the element of saying, for us, and this is national water has disproved this notion. National water, I keep talking about them, is the only public entity providing a public service run by the government. And engineer Silva Mugisha is a Ugandan, he's not an expatriate, he's a Ugandan from Bushenyi, running national water. The other day, areas of Intinda, Nigeria had no water. Today they are quiet because they were upgrading their pipes. So the government entity is performing, delivering a service. So it can but yes, but the government was told by the new thinkers, new public management, that get off with this. What has it brought? Hold on.
Is that the problem? I'm afraid.
I'm giving the problem. The problem is.
Cut you short so that we take a break and I give you more time to expound.
National water is run by Mugisha from Bushenyi. Whomever is run by Chapman from wherever. There is more pain, whatever. There is more pain in Umeme than in national water. So much as you think locally here that the president's problem, the problem should be contextual.
Can we look at this when we come out of the break? Is it just a political statement? Is it a desire to fix the problems that actually exist in government service delivery? We'll discuss this after a short commercial break. We'll be right back. You're still watching The Fourth Estate, and we're discussing service delivery, now coming from the president realizing that service delivery is not as should have been. Is it a question actually, Betty, of the amount of investment? Because we discuss how much we collect as a country in revenue. We've spent the last few years discussing our contribution as a country to the national budget. 82% as per the last budget. Expected to keep rising. We are about to begin funding our entire budget. People talk about moving from $400 million in 1986 to $1,000 million in 2015. And people ask the same questions. If you have the 500,000 children that manage to sit their primary living examination, only about 150,000. Chris was education editor at Monitor at some time. I also served as education editor for some time. 150,000 are passing. 350,000 are failing. So you send 150,000 into the secondary school system. Possibly 100,000 exit at senior 4. Fewer exit at A level, and even fewer enter into university. The rest are being dropped in between. But even those that go through, Makerere University has had to institute to start the law school pre-entry exams. At LDC, you have to do pre-entry exams to try and improve the quality. And everybody is complaining about the quality. Every child that is coming out. Now, the whole system along the way has a fundamental problem. The question that begs answers, is the president speaking politics? Is it, you called it chickens coming home to roast? Is it a realization that things have been so bad? Is it, as Chris hinted, an election year and the president is possibly thinking, wow, the Ugandans are going to begin asking me questions. So, before they begin asking me questions, let me start by putting out a defense.
You know, Charles, there is payback for every action or for every decision. There is always payback time. And I think what the president is experiencing now, and all of us as a country, is the payback for the actions that were taken over the period. I think it's about 15 years or so, or close to 20 years. This is payback. You start an education system with UPE, it is good. But how do you plan for it? You know? How many secondary schools have been built? You know, there was a time in, during Obote 1, that's when a lot of work was done. They wanted to raise the number of girls in the education sector. What did they do? They built girls' schools. You know? Wanyange, Bweranyanji, Tororo, these were built out of a policy to raise the number of girls that access secondary education. And even before these girls could get to university, they started building Africa Hall because they knew that these girls were going to get into university. So you prepare Africa Hall after building girls' schools. So you can see. Now what happens, this government, they just came with the affirmative action and said we need girls in women in parliament. And you open it up.
And you had women in parliament.
And you had women in parliament. You don't even know where they came from. You know, you did not prepare for them. So now what you have is the feedback, the performance is very poor. So this education system that you're talking about was a good thing, UPE. but it should have been planned. It should have been phased.
No,
How many secondary
look
schools?
at from a management perspective. Yes.
I am looking at
yes.
management perspective, because mass production, there's always a problem with mass production. I mean, if you have 10 children, you cannot be compared with somebody
So
of
you're
your
contending that
age
you're
who has
contending
3
that
children.
the president and his government are a victim of their own success.
No,
But they succeeded in having these numbers.
they did have numbers, but they should have planned better. You know, everything goes with planning, because you must know that you need to. I just gave you an example, and they tell us every day. You start out, all of you, at 25 years old. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I thought open
Yes.
it. You start out. You are both 25 years old, and by the time you're 40, you have 10
These
children.
people are calling. You should know that you're on air. They should leave you alone for now.
We'll close it.
Yes.
You,
Okay.
you, by the time you're 40, I have 3 children. You have 10 children. You know, the quality of the output of our children and what they get is going to be different.
Let me put this question to Chris. Is this a political statement made in an election year to fend off? Because in 2011, during the campaigns, President Museveni chose to parade all these NADS officials all over the place. He would go to an area and bring the NADS official, put them on the podium and say, what is wrong? How many billions have I sent? How much are we sending here for NADS? And then the official would begin quaking. When I think he was in Masaka or Luengo, where he ordered, he said he was going to arrest or take away. People were shouting, take that away, he's not helping us. Is this mere politicking or a desire to address?
But Charles, I just wanted to complete
Sure.
to complete my point. So what I'm saying, part of the planning is a package. You started by asking, we put so much money, but it's not just the money that goes into it. It's everything else. The money, the staff, the appraisal, periodic appraisal. There's so much. It's about a package. So you cannot just examine the people that, that supervise or manage these activities. You must also examine the entire, you know, and I think 15 years or 10 years is a good time to take a break and say, where did we go wrong? Maybe that's what the president is doing.
Maybe we need to ask the question also, who is being appraised here?
Chris,
is it a political statement coming in a political year?
First of all, you must acknowledge that everything government does is to achieve politically determined goals. And there's no crime in that. The trouble now is what are our goals and are we achieving them? There's a tendency for us, the intellectuals, to keep telling the masses that this is politics. Yes, running the state is a political business. Whatever the president, the minister does, a commissioner, is to achieve those political ends. If they're extending water, it's to the point that extension brings dividends to the government in power. So this is not
political dividends?
Yes, political dividends. Because relevance of government ordinarily is supposed to be from its service delivery. That's what makes you decide which leader to choose on or the other. So when you talk about politics, we are trying to look at the politics the way it has been bastardized here. Politics is not, it's part and parcel of life. So whether he makes a political statement, whether he does what, the point is, does it translate into the well-being of a citizen? Period. What we are saying here is that the president, like most of us, are caught in a complex of issues that we are not able to disaggregate and then say, where did the problem come from? Even the planning bits he's talking about, indeed there's no planning. Why? But we have serious planners here. Except that the government planners are planning and writing good plans to donors. They are not writing good plans to government. You must know that. The same people you see are the ones who create these projects. These projects are supposed to be sponsored by donors. And therefore, it means the accountability is not to government, but to donors.
No,
If you knew how the Minister of Health is a project house, you know what I'm talking about. So the picture here is, much as the president laments, we need to think of a guiding philosophy. We need to reconstitute our state and say, what do we want? It is from that we want that we decide the mechanisms of getting it. Now, the president is complaining because the mechanisms of service delivery are mad. It is impossible that even when he tries to do it as Museveni, he will not get the expected results because they are divided royalties from the policy implementers, and they have a reason why they are doing what they are doing.
Have we arrived here accidentally? That's the question.
No, Charles.
Yes.
First of all, We have had several presidents in Uganda. Some have been there for 69 days, some have been there for months, others, I think Amin was there 8-9 years. President Museveni has run now 28 years. 29 years. There is also a cost to maintaining stability of a country. And it is an occupation. It is something that occupies the president every day. How do I keep this country together? Now, for him as a politician, he has to see how to keep the country together. So we go for elections.
Some people might argue and say, as a politician, he might think about how do I win another term. Not necessarily how do I keep the country together,
well,
but how do I win another term.
But the point I'm making is
why is the country not together? Why is it hard to keep the country together?
No, the country is together, except that there are always different forces trying to tear it apart. And so if you're a leader, your work is to bring people together. So we elect MPs, and from these MPs, the president appoints ministers. Now, when you come to these programs that are not effective, it is not just the work of the minister. Chris is talking about something. You have officials, you have other people, from the permanent secretary to the people down, the people in the projects who are running all this. These are fellow Ugandans. Now, the president has said this after having these up-country tours and assessing. He's been moving around. You watched him the other day with Honorable Betty Kami. He's been moving around and seeing, if we are sending money here, how come I don't see the schools? How come these classrooms are few? How come this health center is, empty? He's seen all this now. Leave the reports that were being filed of we have done this, glossing over the issues. But he's moved around the entire country. There are a few villages the president has not traversed. And now he comes to say, look, we have a problem here. How can we sit together? How can you people discuss and see how we get here? I was telling Honorable Kamia off air that if you became president, you would still choose the same people, from the same people.
Why?
Because this is what you have.
No,
is the president
some competences. I don't think the entire Ugandan population is
No, Charles. The point that Chris was making about privatization. The government decided to privatize business for profit organizations or institutions. Some mistakes were done along the way, and some sectors that deliver services like UMEME, UEB, was also privatized. But institutions like UEB, like National Water, those should remain, because government is supposed to provide services.
Interesting, actually, Hussein, the president also talks about privatization and said privatization no more, because at this rate, Ugandans might demand that we privatize State House.
Yes.
You see, Charles,
I found some merit in that.
It's because the institutions that government is left with are service delivery institutions.
My understanding, Chris, just as you come in, my understanding of the president's comments, where he was questioning a failure of supervision. Supervision starts at the lowest level, where the project and the service is being delivered. It goes through the hierarchy. In the case of the president and appointed ministers, who are largely from elected officials, my interpretation is that you're asking along the line where people have given you a mandate and you have failed to deliver on that mandate. The question is, how high does he go in evaluating what Betty said, in evaluating what the problem is? He's heaped responsibility on his ministers. And people are going to ask him, who appoints those ministers? Who selects them for you? How do you select the wrong people? And then they fail to deliver on the results.
See, one of the foundations of public policy and public administration is that leaders must do the right things, and the managers do things right. If you go by that, the president is saying the leaders have not done the right thing, and therefore the managers are not doing things right. We must now trace where did this disconnect come from, and that's my preoccupation. And remember, I am a statist. I don't believe in your greed, your private sector driven, this Chicago school, the Thatchers and what, who are greedy, wanted their own companies to rule the world, and they come and propagate profit. I believe I'm a statist, and I believe in the foundations of the state. And that is that each citizen in that state, because once you're a citizen of Uganda, you cannot expect services from Congo. you expect from Uganda. So the citizens must control the destiny of their services. Now, if you break the state, it's where I am concerned because I'm a statist. If you break the state, you are likely to end up where Museveni has ended. Lamentations. We have agencyfied everything. And agencyfication, hold on, in the agencyfication, you find a Musisi who's running. Yes, agencyfication is the creation of agencies to run government.
Yes, I agree.
So you find KCC an agency. The Musisi takes 38 million per month. And she's under president's office. The PS president's office takes 3 million. The PS is supposed to be the overall accounting person to deliver of this.
In the ministry.
In the ministry. In the Ministry of Environment, NFA, the boss will take 15 million. The PS will take 3 million. And yet the other was supposed to report to this. You already see the disconnect. And all of that was built to undermine the state capacity to deliver. Now, even those agencies have failed to deliver. Because the state agents, the PSS, the commissioners, feel like they are not part of this process.
But can I take it up with you after a short break? Because we've slightly overshot our time. Let's come back after a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this last segment of the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing performance of ministers, an issue raised by the president during the cabinet retreat on Monday and Tuesday. And where does there's this talk, Betty, of the backstops here. I think one president, you know,
the backstops with who?
Yeah,
the backstops with the, I think, to some extent, us, the voters. I think we have to take responsibility. And for me, you know, the problem
for denying your votes.
No, I'll tell you where the problem is. Normally, and Charles and Hussein Chris and Hussein have made some good analysis. But at the end of the day, how do you change the system if you don't like it? Now, when you can't change the system, when you can't, because your vote does not count, then you have a problem. Because that's where solving the problem should start. If I don't like what you're doing, I should be able to vote you out. But when you can't, you know, when you can't, or you're not able to change the system, I mean the government in office, then there is impunity. Then the focus is not on service delivery, but on how to remain in office.
Political analysts would say, Betty, that the president was actually being politically astute by deflecting that blame from himself in an election year, saying, you see, I know why the problem is. You guys are not getting services that you need. You voted, you elected me into cabinet, I mean into government. I have appointed these people to help me deliver services to you, but they are failing me. So don't blame me.
No. I agree with what Chris is saying is that we have what do you call it? We have a shell of a government. We have agency. What did he call it?
Agencyfication.
Agencyfication and projectization. One time I was telling somebody about something we need to do, and said we need to projectize it. You know, like write it.
Write a project proposal.
Right, projectize what you're saying. So what Chris is saying is that we have this structure that cannot deliver. And I am saying, Chris is right, but how do we change that? Because if we were able to change government and Betty came in, Betty would change that and go away from agencyfication to something else.
But these issues
so
we are
the problem
discussing.
is we have a vicious circle of something that is not going away.
Charles, these
Because
issues
it
we
is
are
rooted.
discussing are not the ones that form the
Because
the questions that are being asked at the campaigns to choose our leaders. No, they don't.
What is lacking? Because
Chris wants these to form the basis for us to assess our leaders before we re-elect them. But Betty will tell you that's not what they ask her when she's in a constituency. There are different things they are saying. Who comes to the village to bury, who has not buried, who.
Yes.
These are the people they send to
Let's
campaign.
Let's talk about change of government.
Yes.
Museveni has said, and
When
I
people are
agree with him
dissatisfied,
to some extent.
listen, when people are dissatisfied, like Ugandans have been and the president has confirmed it himself, they should be able to change government.
We
and
had
what people
turnovers
fear,
of government at an average, he told you, 69 days? 60, how many days? 69 days?
69.
Yes.
but Ugandans have never been the ones to.
Another one
But
said
it's never
8
been
years, another said,
Ugandans. It's never been Ugandans. That's why we always change governments by force of arms, because people are not able to change
I
governments
thought it's Ugandans who pick the guns and go to the bush. Used to go to either organize a coup
through the ballot, not through frustration. We want to change government peacefully because I've listened, because I've made appraisals, because I decide that.
But we have been changing
go
government
by the ballot.
And
But the reason you're not able to do that is, I go back to my pet subject, is because of the structure of our constitution, which makes it impossible for any incumbent to get out of government, even if it is better.
You have been elected. Of all of us here, you've at least tested an election. You were a member of parliament for Rubaga
Yes.
constituency. Rubaga North?
Yes.
Rubaga North constituency. In parliament. You were on the ballot for the presidential election. And Hussein has asked the question, what questions do the people you went to for elections ask of you? Do they ask these questions we're trying to raise here, or they ask different questions? If they ask different questions, how many people you have buried, how much you contribute to weddings, how many do you actually attend, how available to the people?
No, but you know what is happening? People think that it is just not possible, so they've kind of left the top. They just deal with they will change their MPs. They know that you can change your MPs, you can change your councillors, but somehow they've kind of given up on changing.
You see, Charles,
is it a resignation?
No, you see, Charles, the issues we are discussing here is that we have a political elite that is weak and disoriented. And that's the problem I think Museveni is trying to say
and
without saying this. Now, when you have a weak political elite, it gives birth to a disjointed technical group. Because the technical respond to the signals from the political elite. Now, it starts up and has gone up to the village area.
And the political elite is supposed to pick signals from the masses that actually go
exactly. Now, what happens is that the headmaster in the school in the village will react to what the sub-county chairman is saying. Now, if you have a weak sub-county chairman, it impacts on how the headmaster performs. So we must reclaim the political elite. That means you, the political class, must be concerned on who becomes a leader. So increasingly, it is not that the technical don't know what they're supposed to do, but their responses, always come here, their responses, because it is the political structure that matters eventually. What they decide is what happens. So now, the technical, with all their knowledge, will first read the mood, the political mood. If a minister thinks this way, then they think this way. And then President Museveni not help matters. He has been making very inconsistent statements on this. At one of the similar retreats, he said, no minister should tamper with the permanent secretary. You are the government. Now, what happened? The ministers, I think, could have said, okay, it's the permanent secretaries. Today, he's saying the ministers are not working. So there is no consistency on what government tends to do and what's supposed to be playing. That's how these pictures. That gave birth to the outsourcing of thinking in this country. And the outsourcing of thinking by government departments is turning Uganda into an intellectual slum. That we look to be unable to think and originate that what is good for us. It is capturing now to begin to affect the policy principle called Yoweri Museveni. Okay. Because when he moves in the villages, in spite of all the billions of shillings that his government presumably injects to improve the well-being, he is seeing an increasing desperation from the population. Yes. And he must come back on the drawing board, and 1, 2, because he should become a listener. The trouble with the leadership in Uganda, Once you occupy a position, you assume you are the beginning and the end of understanding.
And
What happens to others?
Okay.
They say, fine. Now they have been saying, Museveni, fine. What is he seeing? Desperation.
Yes.
Are these inconsistencies accidental, deliberate? Because you can pick and choose when to say what, depending on the audience you're addressing.
No, they are not. And for me, who has worked with the president, I know that he has always been saying this. It's not the first time that he's feeling a frustration over.
But we didn't elect him
Yes.
to lament.
So that's
No.
Hussein
You
is
see,
making my point.
the issue here is that you are contending with the president who is honest, and you seem to have a problem with his honesty. He's a chief executive, but he's a Ugandan, and he wants these services there. He would be happy to go to Kaberamaido, to go to Kumi, and he sees that these government programs are working. So he gets there and they're not working.
Hussein is
And
just
he's
making
asking,
my point.
and he's asking, why aren't these things working? What is the problem? So you are now blaming him for being honest. But he's not. He's in fact that to the extent, Charles, that I don't think he was politicking. He was asking genuinely, I have been moving around. I am seeing this. What is the problem? What can we change in order to deliver
Please
these
help me
services?
understand. Help me understand. I might be the most naive person on the show tonight. I thought if you give someone responsibility to execute and you find things are not working, the first thing you do, either on scene or back in your office, pick the phone and say, Betty, I gave you this responsibility. I was in this place. I found things were not working. And if Betty doesn't give you a satisfactory explanation, then you determine whether she keeps her office or doesn't keep her office.
Charles, Chris talked
I
about
thought at
it.
a basic level.
No, Chris talked about it.
Just let me finish this. Because when borders are being harassed out of Kampala, they waylay the person they gave their vote, and that is the president, and say, Mr. President, we're being harassed out of Kampala. Find a solution for us. When voters are dissatisfied with their LC3 chairperson, with their member of parliament, they have voted by saying the attrition rate in parliament is not accidental. 120 members of parliament in the 8th parliament
It's 70%.
did not return to the 9th parliament because voters said they were not satisfied. So as the supervisor of these people, what is it to say that at a retreat? Yes, you might say it was closed, or to say you have a problem, please account.
Charles, the point I'm making is that you are looking at the president and his ministers, and he's saying, you people either are not supervising these programs or you are not doing enough. And so you think the solution is to say, you minister, I have fired you. But firing the minister does not actually answer the question. On ground, money has been eaten, the health center has not been built, or if it's been built, it's a shell. Drugs are not there, doctors are not there, there is nothing, mothers are dying during childbirth. So what's happening? So when you say, just fire the minister, you are not actually answering the question. What the president is saying, we are government, we have a mandate, we have this money that we have put in these different sectors, but this is what's happening. Why are these services not getting to the people?
For me,
that's the critical question that is asking.
What I don't want. I mean, it may seem a bit out of the context that we are discussing, but I don't want to sit here and discuss something for 18 years. You know, that started in 1997. And it is not
that's just one department. You could spread it to agriculture, you could spread it to health.
Everything. Okay, say 30 years if you like. What I don't want is to sit here in 2015 and discuss the lack of delivery of ABCD, and then you say, like Chris says, it's because of this agencyization, and Hussein is saying it's because my problem.
But Betty, it is not that there is absolutely nothing.
Listen. No. What I'm saying, my problem, and this is a fundamental problem, is that the non-delivering government, we should not be discussing it today. Because the voter should have voted it out. But are we able...
So the voter endorsed.
At the end of the day...
There's something they commented at the beginning. I said at the beginning of the show. There was this report. Not a Ugandan report, that gives good approval rating. Above 60% of Ugandans think government is functioning properly. 80%, more than the government, think the president is actually delivering.
But the president...
Is the problem the people? Is the problem the government? Is the problem... What's the problem?
The report is false.
The report is
Doctor.
You know, that report was very interesting.
Yes.
Because there are some clearly, there were some statistics that I found very, you know, outlandish. For instance, I think they said that the voter turnout is likely to be 87% in 2016, when in the last election, the voter turnout was actually about 57%. 59%.
And I predict that that's what
so
President Museveni
I
is going
don't
to
know.
get at the next election.
That one I agree even. I don't know.
You think he's going to get 59%?
No, he's going to get 87%.
Ah, okay.
Because many people are not going to stand, I think, because I'm not going to stand. On a serious note, I don't want you, Charles, to invite us here to discuss the 20 or so years of frustration with the government of President Museveni not delivering.
So
what we should be discussing is why can't people vote him out? Why don't people vote him out?
None of us has been on the ballot. You have been.
Yes, I'm telling you. And I'm saying that people are not able to vote a government out because of the structure of our constitution, which gives incredible ammunition to any incumbent to stay in government. As long as that is the case, President Museveni will sit here in the next in year 2011, I mean 2021, and still say, why are we not delivering? And we shall sit here and discuss that. What we need to discuss is why is it not possible for voters, if they're not getting services, to change governments?
Maybe that's
or is it
discussion
possible?
for another show. Let's Chris come in because we
Charles,
just end and get out of here.
when we talk about service delivery, for Betty who is aspiring to lead, the thinking of government should be based on the fact we want to do this in order to achieve this.
Yeah, but they're not able to.
It must be clear that what we want is this, we are going to do this, this is what we want. And for you to do that, once you say you want to do this, you must input. So we must be asking President Museveni, have your input been enough?
For me, that's what I don't want
And
to
then
ask
now,
him. I
and
want
then
the
now,
voters to say, I'm not happy.
But once you're a president, you'll be asked to do that.
But how many of these questions do the people know that you're talking about?
Why we make you president?
People don't know these things.
Is for you to decide the allocation of costs and benefits.
You see, Charles
so
is
he is in charge now. So the point is, we have been weak in knowing what we want to do and what we want to achieve. We have been weak in putting inputs. We are now complaining on the outcomes. But even if you do that, if you have a good plan and how you are going to achieve it, you must have control. When I began by saying the state ability to control the delivery of services was undermined by a policy that was designed by someone else. You have a family, Charles. Every family has challenges.
But how many years ago was that?
But you are able to navigate the challenges by making decisions. But if the members of your family have a loyalty elsewhere, I can bet your effort will be in vain. So you must have control of how the family is running. Government was weakened and is being weakened by using the very members of its own government.
So how do we get out of that?
Unless you give the control back, Museveni is running. Do you know why Museveni is ranked 80? Because no one controls on what amount of money Museveni wants to give to Mangusha. Nobody. When he says, I am going to support Chris Obore with this amount of money,
but
it might be easy to refuse, but it will deliver.
I actually thought if he asked for control,
there's no
President
control.
Museveni has had perfect control.
Of government?
Yes, of government.
No.
If
he has been in control of the presidency.
If you ask about navigating challenges, I think he believes he's the master of navigating challenges.
Charles, but
I
want to make a point. I want to disagree with Chris. I think as a country we know what we want to do.
You said the people don't know.
No. Yes. When I was talking about the people, I was talking about the questions that they ask at the election. But as a country, we know what we want to do.
What do we want?
We know that we want to reduce infant mortality rate. We know we want to reduce mortality rate for the mothers. We know that we want our children to go to school. We know that we want roads. We know we want hospitals. We know what we want.
But there is something called the how.
So
you don't just want.
Yes, and we have tested different programs on how to achieve the things that we want.
What is that working?
And that is why the president is now posing the question, why aren't those systems delivering?
Because he didn't get the how better.
Perhaps that should invite a national
These
debate.
gentlemen are trapped in thinking that we must have President Museveni.
No.
Yeah,
We must have a president.
even Chris is trapped.
No.
But Betty, you're
We must
also
have a
saying
president.
the president
No.
is Museveni, you should also
No.
go away.
Museveni
You will
should
have
go away.
Betty
Yeah,
and you will
saying,
have the same problem.
Why do you even discuss if things have not worked for those agencies and they're not work? Why are we discussing that? Let us discuss how to change government.
Yes,
No,
we have had
that
the
is your
highest-
duty.
We have had the highest
That's your
turnovers
duty.
of government,
Government.
in the region.
But you know the problem. You know the problem with our governments. One, they don't get mandate from the people. You know, so they concentrate on how to stay in power.
I think I've heard General Mutz
From-
talk about
from the
that.
mandate.
Everyone wants to take over power. But what do you want to use
But
the
with the
power
same
for?
system, you can't
Yes,
have
you
and
must
the people,
discuss
the
what you
people
want
must
to
be
do.
allowed
Our
to
time is out.
rotate
We need to
as
get
much
out of
as
here.
possible.
Thank you
No.
very much. Thank you,
This
Chris.
business
Chris.
of outsourcing thinking, outsourcing government, when we pay government, is nonsense.
So another government should come and take
And
another
do what?
policy.
Let's first
and
discuss
Our
Guys,
have
time is
another
out. We need to
policy.
get out of here. Thank you very much, Betty Olive Kamia, for making time for the show. Thank you very much, Hussein. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much to you all our viewers for joining us tonight. Do join us again next Sunday for another exciting discussion right here on the Fourth Estate. Have a good night.